All right, it's now 6:30. So welcome and thank you for joining us today for Scottsdale Parent Council's Forum with candidates for the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board. My name is Wayne Schutsky and I'm the managing editor with the Scottsdale Progress newspaper, and I'll serve as the moderator for the forum today. Before we begin, I'm going to lay out a few ground rules for the forum for our candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening and closing statement at each end of the forum. We will then ask each candidate questions that have been submitted in advance by the public and myself. For transparency, I'd like our audience to know that the candidates were provided with the questions prior to the event. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. Upon request and at my discretion, a 30-second rebuttal may be allowed if a candidate is directly addressed by another within their 1 minute response. Timing with the forum is critical, so we ask that the candidates respect the time frames. I will provide a time warning, and if you exceed your response time, your microphone will be muted. Finally, at the conclusion of the questions, we will offer that closing statement. So now let's meet our candidates and hear their opening statements. We will begin in alphabetical order by last name. So we will start with Julie Schutsky.
Hi, I'm Julie Sanowski. I'm a career educator, parent, resident of Scottsdale for 27 years, and a true and committed advocate for public education. I'm running for school board because I believe Scottsdale Unified School District can do better by improving our communication, honoring collaboration, and supporting our commitment to keeping the promise of quality education for all students. We can return this district to the prominence the community deserves and expects. As a parent of 2 children who went through SUSD K through 12, I understand the struggles and challenges parents face. I know that raising children while working full-time creates its own set of challenges. As a young family in the Navajo neighborhood, we struggled to find affordable and dependable childcare. The struggles became so real for our family that at one point, I took a leave from teaching to stay home with my children. I felt my earnings from teaching barely covered our healthcare and childcare costs. When I went back into teaching full-time, I found that I relied heavily on the schools to extend the necessary communication to me about my children. We only know what we know, right? So simply posting information, in my mind, is not effective communication. That doesn't help parents, busy parents, very well. Parents want what is best for their children. And when children struggle, families struggle. Navigating this K-12 process can be challenging. Once selected, I will rely on my professional training, my personal experience as a parent, and listen to the input of others to support the initiatives at work and resolve to improve or delete those which are deemed ineffective.
Thank you. All right, next we'll go to Dr. Libby Hart-Wells. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. I did that in case you could hear the dog. My name is Dr. Libby Hart-Wells, and I want our kids to have an education, my kids, our kids, your kids, that allows them to maintain an intellectual curiosity they already have, gain confidence so that they can work successfully with different people and in different cultures, and some to globally compete. As a community college educator, a former assistant VP of research at Purdue University, and a parent of 2 current Scottsdale Unified School District students, I've been integrated into our education system for decades, and I've worn a few different hats. And what I've learned is that preparing our students for the world of their future sometimes requires us to recalibrate how we think about literacy. And specifically, believe we must provide all of our students an education that fully integrates science and data literacy pre-K through 12. Now, there are some things happening in the district already to this end. A current example is Miss Brandy Wilson at Navajo Elementary School, who won a competitive grant from Intel, one of the 40 for 40 teachers grants, to tap into the empathy of young learners to connect designing and creating with quantitative measuring tools and tactile projects to, quote her words, bridge the gap between school learning and their world, end quote. In other words, dynamic learning at your neighborhood school focused on collaboration, problem solving, and engagement, but differently, getting prepared to globally compete. I tell my own 2 teenagers very often that there are many paths to success, in part because there are different types of learners, and that diversity, both in learners and curriculum, is strength, and it's a strength that I embrace. Melissa, I just want to close by thanking the Scottsdale Parent Council for hosting tonight's forum and thanking you, the viewer, for joining us.
Thank you. Next up, we have Zachary Lindsay.
Just call me Zach, Wayne.
Sure.
Okay, so my name is Zach Lindsay, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. First and foremost, I'm the dad of an elementary school student in our district. I've been in the financial services industry for 19 years. Moved here from St. Louis in 2005, met my wife a short time later. She was a teacher at a Title I school in Phoenix, and it really set me on my path of advocating and supporting schools in the Valley. My goal since meeting my wife is to do right by all kids. It was on our first date. That's the first time I heard it from my wife when she was telling me about everything she did for her students. But she really opened my eyes to the challenges that our teachers and staff face. At the time, my wife was making $27,000 a year, had 3 roommates, and had a waitressing job on the side. But she still did everything she could for her students and went without to make sure they had things to succeed. And it just really, invigorated me to want to do my part and make a positive change. When we had our daughter, and she was entering kindergarten, we got together and decided, well, where do we want to go for her to go to school? And it was a no-brainer. It was to come back to Scottsdale, have her go to, Scottsdale Unified. So ever since my daughter entered kindergarten, that's been my sole focus, is supporting our schools, our teachers, our staff, whether that be PTOs or, volunteering for Dads and Donuts, or taking off work to do weekly school tours, or meeting with district leadership, just anything I could to make a positive difference and to do right by all kids.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And last up, we have Rose Smith.
Hi, I'm Rose Smith, and I'm actively seeking your vote for SUSD School Board. You've all heard my tagline, from grad to grandma. My grandchildren at Cheyenne are 3rd generation to go through SUSD schools. I'm a Saguaro grad. My nieces and nephews graduated from Saguaro, Chaparral, and Arcadia. So we are SUSD through and through. As your elected school board member, I'd work to ensure that all students have the opportunity for a well-rounded education, fostering an atmosphere of encouragement, equity, and inclusion. I want SUSD to remain the district of choice in a state of school choice. I'd like to promote all the great programs SUSD has. We should have marketing for programs like crazy. Our brand should be one that the city and local businesses will want to include in their own marketing. Strong schools build strong communities. Strong communities attract good businesses and high-paying jobs. These all contribute to our high property values. SUSD is value added to the economy in our community. As a long-term public employee, I am fiscally conservative with public funds. I'd like to ensure that students and those who support them are given priority in funding. I'd like to also ensure that teachers and leaders seek us out as a destination district so we attract the most talented educators for our students. This district has suffered some dings to our enrollment and our reputation for the past several years. Coincidentally, the same years that some board members may have had personal agendas. Personal agendas are not in the best interest of our students, families, or communities. I vow to work hard on behalf of SUSD to ensure that our education and our ethical standards are of the highest merit. Despite blessings or challenges, I will strive to ensure that all our students have equal access to success and the career path of their dreams. I would be honored to have your trust and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So that will take care of our introductions today. I do want to let our viewers know that there would be 2 additional candidates on the ballot. Kathleen Angelos and Lucy DeGrazia declined to participate in the forum. So now we will move on to our question and answer portion. For the first question, I'll just move in reverse order that we did the introductions, and the rest of the orders I generated using a nifty little website that just randomly spits out orders for me. So the first question, and we'll start with Rose. What professional or volunteer experience do you have that qualifies you to serve on the school board?
I have worked with youth my whole career. I've been a para-educator at all 3 levels of education, elementary, middle school, and high school. High school, I did the LRC resource program for 9th grade. I worked in secondary schools for SUSD for several years. That's how I know so much about the high school and the secondary piece, because I used to write the high school planning guide. I also worked for City of Scottsdale in the juvenile diversion program. That's the juvenile justice system. So I've been working with kids pretty much my whole career. Volunteering over the past decade, I volunteered for Boys and Girls Club, TGen. Dirk and I sponsor the Martin Luther King Youth Voices event every year. I'm in a 4-year appointed position called PPAC, Professional Practices Advisory Committee, and I also volunteer in the local schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Zach, you're up next.
Sure. So first off, like I said, I am the dad of an elementary school student. She actually just turned 9 yesterday. So I think that gives me a unique perspective with an elementary school student. I've been in the financial services industry for 19 years. The last, 14 years have been my own practice. I started advocating about 14 years ago for our schools, helping out. So I have a long track record of helping out in schools. Before my daughter was born, Title I schools in Phoenix. So seeing those challenges in those schools and all the great things that the staff and the teachers do there. And also, like I mentioned in my intro, ever since my daughter started, my sole focus has been supporting our schools. I actually took a step back in my practice, let some licenses lapse, and I've just been doing everything I can to support our students.
Thank you.
Yep.
You guys are making it easy on me, keeping it under the time and everything. Dr. Hartwells, same question to you.
Thank you. Please call me Libby.
Okay.
Yes, I have a unique skill set that I believe is a value add to the board and to the community. So first, I am a trained scientist, and scientists are trained to be problem solvers, objective problem solvers. When you're up against nature and you're trying to discern complex phenomenon, it can be the toughest of critics. So you have no choice if you're going to be successful, but to be objective. I am a teacher now. I am an educator in a community college, and I am going through the same challenges and experiencing the same challenges that a lot of our teachers are experiencing. I empathize. I'm feeling the same struggles and frustrations in trying to educate learners in a pandemic. Last but not least, by any means, I have experience setting on boards of directors, nonprofit institutions that are associated with educational institutes. I considered a thought leader, so much so that I was actually asked to, oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Nope, no problem. Thank you. All right, Julie.
Well, as some of you might know, I have been a committed servant to this vocation of public education and our community throughout my adult life. I have served as a local scout leader, community-based coach, Special Olympics coach, room parent, PTO, site councils. Excuse me, I had to write some of this down. I served on the Arizona Education Association Board of Directors within the Scottsdale Education Association. I've served as a site rep and executive board member and a president for 3 years. I am a creative problem solver. I am good at listening, and I think that is a key to solving problems. I've been involved volunteering for Moms Demand Action, March of Dimes, American Cancer Society. I've been involved in Prop 123, 301, 208, bonds and overrides. I will continue to advocate, and I will continue to listen in order to learn and create the change that our district needs to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to the next one, I forgot to clarify. When I do this, that means 10 seconds left for you guys. So just a way
figured that.
I figure you guys would figure it out, but I just wanted to clarify. All right. So for our second question, if elected to the board, there are obviously a litany of issues that you'll be asked to address. So simply, what are your priorities once elected? For this one, Zach, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, one of the pressing priorities in the district is increased collaboration and communication between the district and stakeholders. There needs to be trust rebuilt between the teachers and staff and the district. It's been a lot of years of this taking place, so it's going to take some time to heal, but that really needs to be a priority. Communication as a parent, I've seen issues, but I really think the increased communication and collaboration can help not only retain our teachers because they feel like their voice is valued, they're respected, they have a say, but it also attract new teachers because maybe they feel like their voices aren't heard wherever they're at and they want to come here. Financial transparency is another biggie. We need to be open and honest with how we're spending our money. And also diversity, equity, and inclusion is a really big thing, especially with everything that's been going on in our society. So those are some of the issues that we really need to handle.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And next we'll go to Julie.
All right. My priorities would be to restore trust. We've lived through a culture that did not include stakeholders. Another priority of mine would be to focus on fiscal priorities directed towards student relevant spending. Zach had mentioned collaboration. That's super important to give people voice, including students. And our commitment to student success. That looks like wraparound services that must include a decrease in class size for our students to really be successful. We need to look at our focus on real learning and not just on testing. We cannot pretend to care about the well-being of our students when we do not intentionally include the educational experts in that decision-making process. The teachers who work with the students and the parents who try to do what is right by their children.
Thank you. Next up, Libby.
Thank you. Well, all of my priorities would always be rooted in the educational welfare of all of our students. So as a touchstone at all times. And my first priority I mentioned in my opening remarks, which is to rethink this concept of literacy in today's world, what it means for our students' future. So for example, currently the #1 new wage jobs in the US have to do with computing, are related to computing. 67% of all new jobs in the US relate to computing. Data literacy, science literacy, integration, pre-K through 12. A second priority and part and parcel of the touchstone educational welfare of all students is a fiscal policy review. It is no secret that this community has been injured and is trying to heal. It's unfortunate that we're in the middle of this particular type of an election season and trying to heal. But I do have experience in policy making, policy oversight. The fiscal policy review
That's our minute.
Needs to start. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Rose, same question.
Thank you. Right now, I think priority would have to be working towards getting us back to a fully functioning district after COVID. I'd like to prioritize not only education, but the health, safety, and social emotional needs of our students and our staff. I would support putting the most qualified people in place and empowering them to be leaders. I would uphold the promises of the bond and the overrides that have been approved by our voters and our taxpayers and assure fiscal responsibility. I'd ensure that our children and the classroom, the dollars are prioritized to them first when setting the district budget. And I would like to work toward proving that the district is engaged in equity and inclusion to ensure that all our students have full opportunity for success in their chosen education or career path. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. In your response, you mentioned COVID, and that'll take us to our next question. So COVID-19 is obviously a focal point for most school districts right now as they attempt to return students to the classroom and in a safe way that can bring them the education that they need. So as it pertains to SUSD, what do you think is being done right? And what do you think should be done differently as it relates to the COVID-19 response? And first, we'll start back with you, Rose.
Thank you. First of all, before I start on that answer, I'd like to say thank you to all those people that are not able to return to the classroom, because we have teachers, we have bus drivers, we have cafeteria workers, staff who have not been able to return, and it breaks their heart. And they never got a retirement party. You know, we never got to honor them or celebrate their good service to us. I'd like to say thank you to them in advance of saying anything else about the COVID thing. Thanks for your service. About the COVID, what we've done right is we've been very nimble. They have been able to jump from scenario to scenario, depending on what the data and the metrics are saying at any given time. And I give our board and our leadership kudos for that. That has been awesome. They've used data and metrics provided by the state to guide us toward a safe reopening. And I look forward to a time when our facilities can all open safely and we can get all our kids back in school.
Thank you. And next, Libby, same question.
Thank you. I think that the district has had their heart in the right place, as has the community. I too am eager to get everyone back into school. And I do believe that they did the right thing by deferring public health decisions to the public health experts. However, I do think that the execution and the communication could benefit from some improvement. And to that end, I'd like to suggest a town hall, and a forum town halls, for example, that's better suited for a two-way conversation with the community and with parents, because we're not going to get to full open without everybody's buy-in and everyone's support. And the board meetings are one way to communicate, but they're really not a forum for two-way conversations, at least not on the level that we need in order to enfranchise and get everybody's buy-in. And that's how we're going to be successful in getting school open for everybody. And I too want to thank everyone who's been doing their yeoman's work to try to get us up and going. And we're very eager to get started in a couple of weeks. So thank you.
Thank you. Zach, you're up next.
Well, I want to speak to how the district got in this situation where educators and board members are trying to make medical decisions. I think it all started back in March. You know, it's longstanding policy for districts to always follow the Department of Health metrics. And I was fortunate back in March, because of what my wife does, to be on the conference call with Governor Ducey and Kara Christ. And at that point in time, they said, keep the schools open for now, but if you want to close, work with the Department of Health before you tell your community. And minutes after that conference call, districts started closing. And so it just totally blew up the norms of always following Department of Health guidelines. So now fast forward to now, and these guidelines are no longer mandatory. So the governor has placed this on the districts to now be put in this tough spot of trying to follow the metrics when they're not mandatory. And it builds up the pressure, and it unfortunately puts our educators in a bad spot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Julie, you're going to take it home on this one.
I really appreciate what Zach just said, because I do feel like our national and our state leadership really threw this off to our local leaders. And You know, anticipating problems is the key to being a good leader, and it takes a lot of courage and knowledge to be a good leader. But when you're not given the information, that's a problem. So one size does not fit all is the approach that I think our district actually did well. They were not thinking of everybody has to do the same thing. I think that's a pat on the back. Nice job. But creating that best learning environment really means ensuring the safe learning environment for all stakeholders. That must include children, faculty, and our community. That not only deals with the physical safety, but also the mental and emotional safety and well-being. So, you know, decisions need to be based on science. They need to be communicated out clearly. We need to stick with them, but I think it's also important to be able to monitor and adjust and be flexible in the decisions we made with clear and intentional communication along the way.
Thank you. Well, our next question also deals with student health. Mental health issues and suicide amongst young people were on the rise, especially in the East Valley, even before the pandemic. And reports have shown that the situation has worsened recently during lockdowns. So what role do you believe schools play in addressing this crisis, and what can the board do to support students' mental health? We'll start with you, Libby.
Well, schools do have a role to play, and I think that we've seen without that educational infrastructure around the community, with us being online, you can see the effect and observe what's happened. So implicitly, educational communities do play a role, whether it's a concerted one or not. Expressly, though, I do believe that the school do play an active role and should. And that part of that is keep talking with us and the stakeholders, not at us. So we need to be good role models. I also I believe that the board's role specifically, because that was part of the question, is to continue to support programs, but particularly synergistic partnerships for mental health, to give students tools and teachers tools and staff tools and resources, access to resources, so that we can, we can tackle, not necessarily tackle it, I guess, but address it in educational awareness and that feeling that there is an opportunity, there are resources out there for you. And I just want to point out the Arizona Youth Survey had some data in it in 2019 that showed that students grades, I believe it was 8th, 10th, and 12th, had increasing.
Thank you. Sorry, we went quite a bit over there. Next, we'll move to Zach.
Well, I think now more than ever, the social and emotional learning is so incredibly important. You know, COVID has caused our children to deal with so many new issues, and it can easily take a toll, but can also take a toll for our teachers and staff as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think the board needs to support that social and emotional aspect and provide the time and resources necessary to address these issues in the classroom. You know, these kids have dealt with a lot of trauma since March, and it's going to take a lot of time for them to heal, get back to normal. And I've seen it with my own daughter and just the issues she's dealt with since school was out in March, or at least not being in the classroom since March. You know, we need to ensure our schools are working to continue building relationships with our parents and teaching our parents about the warning signs for their children. And we also need to find ways to allocate additional resources for counseling support and ensure our district is applying for available grant funds, which have been available to address some of these needs.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, next up, Julie.
This is a question that is really near and dear to my heart. As a dedicated lifetime teacher, I've got to tell you, I've seen the pain that students feel and that they face, and I see how it impacts families in our community. Our world is not getting easier to maneuver, and I think as a governing board member, you know, we really need to be recognizing the value and focusing on nurturing the mental health, the physical health, and the emotional health, not just of students, but also of staff members that work on our campuses. I think there's a lot that we can do, but we have to start talking about it. We cannot continue the harmful approach of if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. We need to be focusing our resources on wraparound services for students. And we need to make sure that those students and the staff members are supported with all of the devices they need to be effective and helpful with mental health.
Thank you. Okay, Rose, now your turn.
Thank you. We had a supermodel in place for our mental health support services once upon a time, but that department was pretty much gutted and defunded. And we've got the model right there. Let's build it back up. We can work off of the bones that we had and expand upon that and make it even better. I'd like to see us create a partnership with outreach services that our families can utilize, such as the Paiute Resource Center, Youth and Family Services through the city, Jewish Family. These are organizations that we've partnered with in the past, and that they've been very supportive in helping our students and our families in times of challenges. I'd like the Teen Town Hall to continue to grow and expand. They can help us identify the challenges that are facing students. We can talk, learn, listen to their concerns, but most importantly, we can implement some action plans and do something, not just talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll shift gears a little bit to finances, everyone's favorite topic. So it's a big deal with school districts all over, but especially in SUSD, as some of the issues that some of you have alluded to in the past few years. So what is your approach to fiscal responsibility in our school system, and how are you planning to provide transparency to stakeholders? For this one, we'll start with Julie.
Well, that's a great question. And actually understanding school finance and budgets is the first step towards practicing fiscal responsibility. I had the opportunity to take a school finance class many years ago by Jeff Gadd. He was my teacher. I've had school law classes, and I think it's really important that we focus on being good stewards of taxpayer funds, and that we're really carefully analyzing our expenditures and making sure that every penny that we're spending is open and honest, that we're transparent about it. When we talk about transparency, that means we are including the taxpayers in the conversation. We've had budget committees in the past, and I'd like to see us bring those back again. I think they were an effective way of promoting fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Libby, we'll go to you next.
All right. So my approach to fiscal responsibility is understanding expenses compared to revenue, and then understanding justification for expenses. Are the expenses justified? Part and parcel of doing so, though, is oversight over conflicts. So an internal auditor is necessary, not just to ensure policies are being followed, but to find efficiencies and effectiveness vulnerabilities that could be identified. So, sorry, my last one. One idea, and this would be where a CFO would be a visionary CFO, is to have deliverables to the board where the principals and the sites are also involved and become part of that discussion of justifying expenses, as long as they're in line with the mission, not as a micromanaging tool, but as an oversight mission. Expenses must be justified. This district has had some trouble.
That's our minute. Thank you. Next, we will go to Rose.
Thank you. The district does have a dashboard up that anybody can look at the budgeting or the revenue expenditure report at any time. And it would be nice to have more reports and such available to the public just at a click. So that's something good that the district is doing. Any data that the public wants is available because it's all public record. If the public wants to look at reports or look at financial documents or invoices or procurement, They can do that by doing a public records request and requesting that data, which I've done a lot. Having worked for the schools, I understand the different buckets of money. I understand the chart of accounts and how things are funded. And that gives me a little bit of an advantage going in, as I know where to look and where the funding is coming from for different school allocations. And most of all, I think transparency means that our practices are unquestionable and ethical at all times.
Thank you. And Zach, next to you.
Well, financial transparency is a big passion of mine with what I do for a living. And one easy thing that can happen on day one is something as simplistic as our agendas. We are the only district that I know of that does not list out in the open the way we spend money with new positions and what have you. And to prove a point, I brought some props. This is one of our agendas with hires for admin, and they're just their names and where and what school they're going to be at. And you can go to any other district and you can pull up the same information, and they show salaries, start dates, where they went to school. I mean, just much more out in the open with the way they're spending money. Another one is I recently discovered an issue about a month ago with the district. Notified the district, it was a very minor issue over fringe benefits, notified the district, they reached back, thanked me for finding it, hired outside legal counsel, and I believe they addressed the issue today in executive session. But that shows the need for the internal auditor, because there's no way this district can keep track of everything.
That's our minute. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to our next question. As I'm sure you're all well aware, and our viewers are well aware, partisanship has played a big role in just about every election that we're all looking at these days, whether it's on the presidential level all the way down to city council and school boards, which are officially nonpartisan races. So simple question submitted by some of our viewers is that, can you remain nonpartisan in this position? And Libby, we'll start with you.
Well, yes, I believe I can, because I've been trained to think objectively. I teach my students to think objectively. Students are not political pawns, and I believe fervently that the board position should remain nonpartisan. Now, when I was in the policy world, it's very difficult in the policy world because you always have politics lurking around the edges. So you learn to be diplomatic and build consensus and collaborate. And I have the skill set to do that and to bring that to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Zach, you're up next.
Yeah, without a doubt, I think I can. You know, as I've gotten older, I've strived to be very open-minded and see things from another perspective. You know, I don't think doing right by kids should ever be a partisan issue. One of the things I take pride in is some of the parents that I've worked with for years. Recently, they've reached out to me and they've been like, "Are you Republican or Democrat? Because we can't tell." And I really take pride in that. The one thing that does concern me with the state of our country is, you know, the political parties are creeping into school board races this year. You know, they're supporting candidates and sending out mailers and doing literature drops for candidates. And, you know, I can say just for myself that I am the only candidate who is registered to a political party and was not included in mailers, does not get offered to do literature drops. And I do take pride in that too, because it shows that I'm independent when it comes to education.
Thank you. Julie, you're up next.
To answer your question straight, yes. However, education has become a partisan issue because our schools must rely on elected officials to determine our budgets and set laws which our schools must abide by. As a social studies teacher in middle school, I taught civics. My students never knew what political party I belonged to, and they never knew who I voted for because I never shared that with them. The issues of educating children is truly nonpartisan. I support advocating for enhanced funding and promoting our school district public schools. I support children, and I support providing them with a successful learning experience.
Thank you. And Rose, you're up.
So I am the queen of nonpartisan over here. I vote for those issues and those candidates that I believe will make our state and our community better, stronger, and kinder. It's important that school board elections are nonpartisan because it ensures that the reason for running is to support the education of our students and not a political or personal agenda. I too was disappointed that the two major parties displayed school board candidates with party affiliations because that doesn't define nonpartisan. I hate to see it become political. I'd like it to remain completely anonymous as far as party affiliations. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Another obviously big part of your job as a school board member, if elected, will be including all of your stakeholders in your decision-making process. So how do you plan on including teachers, students, and parents in decisions that directly impact the classroom? Rose, I'll come back to you.
Thank you. First of all, to kind of quote Hamilton here, you have to put them in the room where it happens. Utilize the principals. They have experience as teachers and as building leaders. They know what work needs to be done at the building sites to serve the students immediately. Get the teachers at the table for decision making. The meet and confer process not only provides a civil dialogue between the certified group and leadership, but teachers are able to advise on recommendations such as class sizes and effective professional development. Make sure qualified, experienced staff are in the conversations and in the rooms when decisions are made. For example, if you're going to have a decision that involves technology, make sure IT is present so they can troubleshoot that and be proactive at the beginning of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Julie.
Rose nailed it. She said everything I thought about saying. So thank you, Rose. Let's be really clear. It's probably the primary role of a governing board member, as those decisions that are made by a governing board without the input of stakeholders, they fail. We've experienced it, and we will continue to experience it unless we change our process so that intentional, timely, honest, and ongoing communication, those are the keys to this unified school district moving forward. A good leader anticipates those challenges and constantly seeks input and insight to rectify any issues before they become a problem. Communication is key to best decision making for our students and our staff.
Thank you. Zach, you're up next.
Well, I think it starts with increased communication, collaboration between the stakeholders in the district. You know, I also think as a board member, you need to be very accessible to the community. You need to be responsive. You need to get out in the schools, go to after school events, go to the football games, basketball games, be there to talk with the public, listen to them, value their input. You know, the biggest thing with this is to basically shut up and listen. We've had a history with our board where they think they know best on everything and they don't listen to the community. So I think that would really move us forward in a positive direction, is to listen and learn. You only know what you know, and it's important that you learn from the people that do know.
Thank you.
Yep.
Libby, you're up.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said, and I will add that there is an opportunity for the board, this new board that's being seated, because my understanding is the strategic plan expires in 2020. So there's a real opportunity to assess what these systemic barriers are in SUSD that exclude educators and students and staff and neighbors, our tax base. So progress really does require for us all to be willing to work together. Saying we're inclusive doesn't mean we're inclusive. In order to be inclusive, you can't rationalize exclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. One topic that the school board is actually discussing tonight is how to address some of the potential achievement gaps that are happening due to COVID. But as I'm sure you're all aware, you know, there are achievement gaps that have existed prior to that for some students. So what can board members do to help close those achievement gaps in SUSD? We'll start with Zach.
Well, first off, I don't think board members primarily are K-12 education experts. So again, it goes back to the listening and learning. We have a new superintendent, so I think it's imperative that the board supports the new superintendent and allows him to create his vision and allows him to address these issues. In trying to gain some understanding of what Dr. Menzel may do, I started reading the book. He gave a book to all the board members. I believe he gave it to some SEA members, some administrators. So I started reading the book to really gain a perspective, and I came away from it knowing or feeling confident that he is going to address these issues. The interesting thing with the book, and I didn't know this reading it, but reading the book, it's Mark Tucker, he gives examples of schools that have high performing systems. And one of the schools in there is a school in Surprise. And it's one of my wife's schools. She didn't even know it was in there. So it was kind of just a laugh for us to see that example in there. So I know what he wants to do.
Thank you.
Yep.
Rose, to you.
Thank you. The state of Arizona in general has significant score differential between white students and students of color and high income, low income students. For example, our white higher income students outperform national averages nationally, but our lower income Black, Brown, and Native students vastly underperform the national average. If we can identify what tools and resources we have, we can start using those to identify and give equitable accessibility to all of our students. I think we have to acknowledge to students sometimes that it's okay that to have failed, and we can work together to get them out of that well. And we need to put tools in place like credit recovery back at the high school level, study skills sessions such as Thrive Time and Dawn Time at Coronado, where our students have accessibility to an educator that can help them to close that achievement gap. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Libby.
As I've said before, in order for us to prepare our students for their future, we have to rethink how we assess literacy and how we prepare them. And there's some of these things going on in the district, as I've mentioned. But as a board member, I think that being more involved in a comprehensive policy making and review with respect to the mission, again, that touchstone of the educational welfare of all students. So supporting partnerships, I'm a big proponent of collaborative, synergistic partnerships that bring new opportunities to students, because we're all different types of learners and everyone has different types of challenges, and trying to address those types of challenges with opportunities. Another thing I think the board can do, and does to a certain extent, but could do more, is to advocate with some of the good news, some of those partnerships that are out there already. And for example, there was an idea floated about a community school, and I think that was a wonderful idea and worth continuing, maybe resurrect that idea, shall I say, and continue to assess, again, new opportunities for students that address different types of learners.
That's our minute. All right, thank you. And next we'll go to Julie.
Well, I really think that focusing on the development of community schools, thank you for bringing that up, Libby. I think that is one of the cornerstones to us pulling the sense of education back into our community and making that the focus. We could be offering free pre-K. We could be providing weekend, not just for students, but for adult education. We need to be open-minded to problem solving. These achievement gaps, they show up in all sorts of ways. And as a matter of fact, a third grader, if they're not reading at grade level, they're 13 times less likely to graduate from high school. So let's hit them on the front end. That's what I'd like to see, our focus of hitting the kids on the front end and not forgetting them. Allow them to have the opportunities to be successful as they move through, but let's continue to acknowledge what these achievement gaps are.
Thank you. All right, that finishes out that question. Unfortunately, another serious issue that districts have to face is the increasing need for more school security in the wake of school shootings that are ever more present. So what can board members do to improve school security or address some of those safety issues? Libby, we'll start with you.
I think I'm the only person without a timer on my computer. I keep running over.
No problem.
So my understanding is the SROs that we contract with the city have not had to respond to any violent incidents on our campus, thankfully. However, as a board, again, that fiscal responsibility, policy reviews, and expense justification, is this the best use of resources? I don't know the answer to that, because you need to really dig into the numbers and do an assessment of an effectiveness and efficiency assessment. But I think that the school security concept is bigger than funding SROs, and it ties back to your mental health question. And there are things that the board can do: adopt policies, adopt programs that address components that lead to violence and behaviors that lead to violence, which I would be supportive of doing as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Julie.
Well, when we talk about school security, I'd like for everyone to think about what ensures a sense of safety anywhere we go. We really need to consider what it looks like in the learning environment. What are the imminent harms? Is it disease like we're dealing with now, environmental contagions, emotional invasions, discrimination, race, identity, denial of access opportunities, even large class sizes? These are the things that violate the care for learning and student success. Violence can also show up in the way of guns. We have lockdown drills that are scary, not just for staff, but also for students. So maybe we could be revisiting what teaching with empathy and learning as an empathetic learner, and caring and considering our building these healthy relationships in our community. I'd like for us to look at these needs carefully and determine whether what we call school security is really about safety of human beings.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Zach.
Well, so the 2016 bond allocated money for school safety and security, and I know the district has spent millions on, security cameras and renovating our offices to be more secure. But from a parent at the elementary schools, I see one area that is lacking, and that is our gates and how we hand out keys. Now, every staff member, every teacher should have access to the schools. They should have keys. But over the years, so many people have gotten keys, and the district has done a very bad job of tracking those keys. You know, I've been at the school in the middle of the day, and people have been out on the fields hitting golf balls. During COVID, the district locked down all the campuses, and I drive by my daughter's school and all the gates would be open, and the fields are full of people. And I just think that if we're going to spend so much money on cameras and renovating the offices, we really need to look at the other side of the school as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Rose.
Thank you. First of all, I think the simplest thing would be, I'd like to explore funding for more campus security. I think that those are boots on the ground people, and they establish a rapport with the students, and they can tell sometimes that might be something going on or something isn't right with a student that day. So our campus security funding, I think, is critical. As for the SROs, I think having worked in a high school discipline office myself, I can really validate the value of SROs at the high school situations. And that partnership with the city of Scottsdale goes all the way back to 1987. If that's in question, I think we need to just come to the table and determine what's important and what isn't. And always to have mental health awareness and resources available to students, so we don't have those kind of challenges that might escalate. Thank you.
Thank you. So for this next question, since we're doing pretty well on time, I'm going to give you a minute and a half. So I'll give you a little extra time here to flush this one out. So anyone who's watched some of the recent board meetings over the past few years on enrollment in the district knows that Scottsdale Unified is in some ways struggling to sustain its enrollment, stem the tide of enrollment dropping. And a lot of that can be attributed to charter schools going back a decade or more. So in your opinion, why are families leaving public schools to go to charters? And what would you do to bring some of those families back? Zach, I'll start with you.
Well, it's a complex question. Every parent has their own decision on why they send their kids where they do. And I think it's impossible to narrow down one or two reasons why. I will say that the chaos and disruption caused by Dr. Birdwell really opened the door to the charters, and they took advantage of it. Our chaos and disruption was their gain. I think two things need to happen with the district, and that's, developing programming that attracts, the students to the district, and we're doing that part. The second part is the marketing aspect, and I think we really need to grow in our marketing. Just with COVID, for example, if you go to one of our charter school competitors and you pull up their website, they have school tours on their website. Really nice, well done. We don't have that at our schools. So when our schools were closed, no school tours, how are parents supposed to check out our schools? So we really need to focus on that marketing aspect. The district is a destination district. 20% of our enrollment last year came from outside the district boundaries. So kids want to come here. I think Dr. Menzel also said it perfectly. You may not like the game that we're in with charters, but we have to play it. And so I feel encouraged that he's really going to revamp the marketing and start pulling these students back.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Libby.
Yes, thank you. So kind of dovetailing actually on what Zach said, understanding why families leave takes an objective question to them. And there does seem to be quite a bit of anecdotal data floating around as to why we think they're leaving. But it would be best to understand an objective assessment of exactly why. We may find some things we don't know already, but the converse is there are families coming in. As Zach said, 20% of the students in SUSD are not living in the district. So the reasons that they're coming, the Math and Science Academy at Saguaro High School is 50% open enrollment. There are programs that people are coming here for, and understanding that component as well. And only then can we come up with an effective and efficient strategy to increase enrollment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Rose.
Thank you. The exit survey is a really interesting concept if it could be done with fidelity. Sometimes parents, we don't even know that they're leaving. We get recorded requests from the school that they're enrolling to, and we don't have time to even ask them why they're leaving our schools. If they're leaving for charters, maybe they don't know that SUSD has programs that can pretty much compete with anything anybody else has. We have International Baccalaureate. We can rival the #1 high school with our AP curriculum. What we can't do is play the ratings game, because that rating is based on the percentage of the students that are in the AP programs, and there's our 100%. So we can't touch that, but we can duplicate the curriculum in our own schools, which offer a much broader range of clubs and athletics and arts for our students. If families are leaving because of class sizes, we can't help with that. We're bound by a state that it doesn't fund education except for numbers of students and classes. But what I could tell them is 100% of our teachers are certified teachers in the state of Arizona, and that they will have a certified teacher teaching their children in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And Julie, to you.
Why are they choosing charter schools? I do believe it's marketing. And I believe that parents really want what they believe is best for their children. But I think they're being sold a bill of goods that really creates, that the sense that the public schools are failing due to fiscal starvation. And doesn't everybody want what's best for their kid? Of course they do. But I'm going to ask this: does the crest on the shirt or the shiny new building really mean improved academics? I don't think it guarantees that. I think we need to get better about sharing our successes. Let's talk about some longitudinal studies of our student success, our employment readiness, the National Merit Scholars, AP Honors, K through 12 IB programs we have now, language immersion, Spanish and Mandarin, the comprehensive gifted program, post-secondary placements. We have national recognized programs in the fine and performing arts, robotics, athletics, extracurricular inclusion opportunities, and diversity. And I think we need to get better about sharing these successes that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, that's going to take us to our last question, and we're still doing pretty good on time, so I'll give you a minute and a half for this one as well. What is your opinion of the Equity and Inclusion Initiative started under Dr. Creekard over the summer, and what is one issue you would like to see that committee address? Julie, we'll go back to you to start with.
Okay, so this, in regards to the Equity and Inclusion Initiative, an initiative does not solve the problems of equity and inclusion. Let's be very clear about that. Constant work, diligence, and honest work solves problems with regards to equity and inclusion. And as I understand it, an initiative was not started. Dr. Creekard formed a committee, and then after discussion and bringing on Dr. Menzel, there was a backpedaling of this. And again, as I understand, the organization of this process was revamped. And I think that was a very smart move. If we really value safety, opportunity, student success for all students, we must discuss issues of personal inclusion, equity of opportunities, and services in our schools and our communities. I suggest that we focus on creating nurturing, learning environments free from negative discrimination, destructive biases, and ensure that every child is afforded the opportunities to be successful. Everything changes when we change our perspective. I'd like for our district to get involved with some equity and inclusion audits and carefully examining what our practices are and if they are truly benefiting all students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to Libby.
Thank you. Well, the initiative is, I understand there also was a previous initiative a few years back of a diversity inclusion committee that came up with a proposal of sorts based on interviews of 30 students and about that same number of staff, parents. That proposal didn't go very far, and my guess is because it was not an inclusive committee. So my hope is if the initiative does move forward in whatever terminology gets used, is that the only way that it can be effective is that it's not exclusive, is that it's outward facing to the community, the community's buy-in. For example, maybe through the PTOs could be collaborators here. So one specific idea that has come up at other board meetings, which I like and I hope continues to proceed, and if I'm on the board, it will, and that is hiring more faculty with diverse lived experiences. But the caveat needs to be that there needs to be a support network around them, a mentorship support network to embrace them and properly support them so they feel included, not just be included, but feel included. And I think that that would be a great first step. And I'll end there. I timed it at 1 minute, so.
Yeah, you're good. You're right on the money. Thank you. And next we'll go to Rose.
Thank you. I'd like to make sure that all students feel welcome and that we could view our diversity as a resource. I'd like to maybe create some kind of citizen liaison so we can welcome in families so they feel a connection to the school, and perhaps if they're not English speakers, they can partner with another parent who can help them to navigate the new school environment. I think the group that Dr. Menzel's putting together, the student forum, is to help identify the issues that the students feel are relevant. And I think that's very, very smart, very wise, because they can speak to their entire school career as to what they feel the issues might be.
Right.
And Dr. Menzel seems to have special interest in that area. It's one of his specialties. And I do think that he will guide us towards some really good implementation on how to address that. Additionally, maybe as we were speaking earlier about security and such, maybe if we implement some kind of cultural sensitivity training for staff, that might be really good to help everyone understand the issues and to embrace the diversity that we have in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll go to you, Zach.
Yeah, so this issue gets me fired up because I come from a very diverse family. I'm private with my family, but we have all, different ethnicities, sexual orientations. We're just a big welcoming family. So this is an important issue to me. I was very happy with when this all started, but I was concerned over the speed in which, the group was formed, having the district form this group before they even got board approval and presented it to the board. I think it's really important we keep the ball moving in a positive direction with this. I know with COVID, this can kind of, lose the focus. So we really need to keep addressing this issue. Equity is a big thing with me that I would like to see an improvement, making sure that every child has what they need to succeed, that we're a welcoming environment for all kids, staff, parents. Back in the superintendent interviews, doing research on the candidates, I kept being drawn to Dr. Menzel because he has an extensive history of working on these issues. And one thing that he said really resonated with me personally, and that's when he talked about, a young family having a baby and leaving the hospital. And if they make a left-hand turn or they make a right-hand turn, it determines the success of their child. And, I just really think with his background, he's going to help address these issues. And we kind of became fortunate with everything that's been happening in our society that we hired him to help us move in the right direction.
Thank you. All right, well, that makes it through all of our questions, and we're just right about at the time I anticipated. So we are going to move to the closing statements. You're each going to have 2 minutes for that. So I want to thank you before we move there. I want to thank you all for your responses. I know that all of our viewers will find them very informative as they make their decision with ballots arriving shortly. So now we'll move on to those closing statements because we have good time. We'll have 2 minutes for those statements and we'll go in reverse alphabetical order. So we'll start with Rose.
Thank you. I'm probably going to give you a 1-minute closing statement.
That's fine.
Thank you for participating tonight. Wayne, thank you for moderating this. It was really awesome. And to the Scottsdale Parent Council for offering the forum. I hope I've convinced you that I can hit the ground running in January. I know this district as a student, parent, grandparent, employee, volunteer, and community member. I have experience in public policies and protocols, statutes, and budgeting. I guess you could call me an engaged stakeholder. Over the past 3 years, I kind of feel like I've been interning for the job of board member because I've been so involved. If elected, I promise to foster an atmosphere of equity and inclusion. I believe all students are entitled to an exceptional public school experience, regardless of their race, creed, or family income. I promise to help level the playing field to promote opportunities for success for all of our students. I have no agenda other than providing our students with an exceptional education. The ripple effect of this is that we will have an educated community that attracts families who appreciate our excellent schools and high property values, and businesses that bring higher paying jobs. I need your support and your vote. I hope you'll tell 10 friends outside of SUSD to vote for Rose Smith for SUSD School Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. And next we'll go to Zach.
Well, like I said before, first and foremost, I'm the dad of an elementary school student. And I think that if I was elected to the board, it would really add a new perspective. In talking with former administrators in the district, some of our most productive and successful boards had these kinds of perspectives on the board. So I think it's a much needed change with everything that's happened. You know, I'm not in this for higher office. I'm not in this to stay on the board forever. So I would be here to live with the decisions that were made. You know, my daughter would still be in middle school. And, you know, and I really live by this mantra of doing right by all kids. And I've tried so hard at the school level to do anything I can to help all kids. You know, my daughter gets an excellent education. And I'm so grateful to the teachers and staff for that. So this has nothing to do with her per se. This is just continuing to move our district in a positive direction. And I think it's the next step forward. You know, I've done so much at the school level to create positive change. Now it's just that evolution to now go to the board level and try to create that positive change and to give a voice for me, you know, the elementary, you know, parents and kids that may get overlooked in the process. So I would hope that you guys would check me out and support me.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Libby, you're up next.
All right, I'm going to close a little uniquely. I see as if I were to have the honor of being elected to the board, the role would be to advocate. The story really shouldn't be about the board. The story should be about the students and the teachers. So for that reason, I'm going to end on spreading some good news. And maybe you know some of this and maybe you don't. But first up, our second grader, Charlotte, at Sequoia Elementary School became the first AR millionaire. So congratulations, Charlotte. We are proud of you and we love you. SUSD has announced it has 14 semifinalists for National Merit Scholarships. Congratulations to those seniors. They are now in the running for over $300 million in scholarships. Echo Canyon has the only 5-star rated pre-K classroom in the Scottsdale Unified School District. Thank you, Ms. Marin. Coronado has 2 English teachers that have started an online book club celebrating diverse authors when exploring a diverse set of literature. I saw that today, and congratulations to you. Thank you to the 2 English teachers at Coronado High School for their efforts in diversity and inclusion. And certainly not last but not least, Mr. Maxwell at Arcadia High School is participating in a conference entitled Frontiers in Education. This is a collaboration with the University of Maryland, my old stomping grounds, and ASU to teach the engineering design process to a new generation of students using music. So those are kinds of examples that I think we should celebrate. And in a season where there's not been a whole lot of good news, I wanted to end on that. Because if I am your board member, it will be about you and not me. Because I'm only in this for the students. I'm not running against anyone. I'm running for the students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Julie, you take it home.
All righty. Thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion tonight to help the voters make their decisions. Listen, in Scottsdale schools, we have some of the brightest students and most committed teachers in Arizona. As a member of the school board, I'll fight to make sure that they have the tools and the resources that they need to do their job well. The administrative dysfunction that has plagued this district needs to stop. It's time to renew our commitment to the students, the families, and faculty of SUSD and return the focus on all of the great things that we do. We should be highlighting our successes and building on them. We should not be dealing with the revolving door of superintendents, the exodus of teachers and staff, and a school board with members intent on dismantling public education. My experience teaching in the public schools and as a parent will make a positive difference to our students and to the greater Scottsdale community. My dedication to keeping the promise of quality education for all students is unmatched. It's time for SUSD to once again lead Arizona. And if you elect me, I won't stop fighting until we do. I will continue to support the initiatives at work and resolve to improve or delete those which are ineffective. A strong school district carves the path for a strong community. I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Well, I want to, in closing, this forum has been recorded and will be available on the Scottsdale Parent Council's Facebook page. I want to thank all of our candidates for showing up today and answering all these questions and taking time out of their busy schedules and their nights to have this time to talk with voters. So again, thank you again to our hosts and the candidates, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. And this will conclude the program for tonight. Thank you.